episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Brody. I am joined alongside my co-host and good friend London Beth. And today, September 1st, 2021. Happy September. Hope you're dancing to some Earth, Wind, and Fire today. I know I was. I know London probably was too, because that guy can move on a dance floor. But we'll be going over roster updates on both sides of the ball and how it impacts the Chicago Bears moving forward. Danny Trevathan is already on the short-term injured reserve. A few other guys are also on injured reserve that are season ending, so we will get into that. Practice squad players are being signed for the love of whatever you want to say. Thomas Graham Jr. is back on the Chicago Bears practice squad roster, so everyone take a deep breath, calm down. There's more signings to come. Our thoughts on why Daz Newsome still isn't on the NFL roster or the Chicago Bears roster right now, as he did clear waivers and a few new depth guys. But before we begin, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Stupid Car Tray. Tired of your pizza toppings sliding, office coffee distracting you while driving, grease and other stains getting on your seat, or you're just enjoying a game on the couch and don't want to lean over? Look no further than the Stupid Car Tray. Proudly USA made, Stupid Car Tray makes your passenger seat or couch a level surface for all transportation and couch potato needs. Visit www.stupidcartray.com and use discount code J16 to get 16% off your entire order. Link in the description.
Nick, our team has all trays, all the Stupid Car Trays. We love them. We use them. So listen, let's get into this whole, everybody was freaking out yesterday about all the, drama with the signings and the releases. So let's get into it. Let's talk about it. Let's get into some recent news and talk about who's here and who's not.
So, what we're going to do is we're going to go over the offensive list of the 53-man roster, and then we're going to go into the defensive list, and then we're going to give our thoughts before we go into the rest of our signings. And because the Bears did bring in a few decent guys today, which I'm very excited about. But let's start. So, London, I'm just going to go through the order from quarterback to offensive lineman. So, here we go. Andy Dalton for quarterbacks. We have 3. Andy Dalton, Justin Fields, Nick Foles. Running backs, we have 3. We have Khalil Herbert, David Montgomery, Damian Williams. Wide receivers, we have 5 of them. We have Rodney Adams. I know a lot of people were very excited about Rodney Adams. Awesome story. Very happy he made the roster. Damiere Byrd, Marquise Goodwin, Darnell Mooney, Allen Robinson. And we did make a signing. We are going to go into that in a little bit. But this is the 53-man roster as of right now because the Bears still need to make some moves. We did make a sign at wide receiver. We're going to get into that in a minute. We have 5 tight ends. Yes, 5 tight ends. Jimmy Graham, J.P. Holtz, Jesper Horsted, Jesse James, Cole Kmet. And then our offensive linemen, we have 10 of them. Alex Bars, Larry Borham, James Daniels, Jermaine Ifedi, Teven Jenkins, who is going to go on IR, short-term IR, so he can come back this season. Sam Mustipher, Jason Peters, Lactavius Simmons, Cody Whitehair, and Elijah Wilkinson. I got all those pronunciations right. I am very proud of myself. I prepared myself this time. The defense, I might struggle a little bit. But anyway, so London, that is the offense as of right now. The Bears did make some moves. We'll get into that in a minute. But overall thoughts on this Chicago Bears offense?
Yeah, Nick, let me start off with saying this. And I'm going to kind of take a shot at myself because I was wrong. I didn't think Nick would be on this team this long. I thought he'd be traded by now. And I thought a team that it was stacking up on injuries, such as like the Indianapolis Colts and some other ones, would make a push to trade for him. I still think it's possible, but that's one of the things things I was right on, things I was wrong on, kind of like Colin Cowherd. I was wrong about Nick Foles still being on this roster. The big guy on offense that I actually want to talk about, and everybody's talking about Rodney Adams because he was a practice squad player last year. Now he's made the 53-man roster. And that's actually a really, really great story. He'd had a great training camp and a great preseason games. And I'm very excited to see that he made the team. And I hope that he, can get on the field and make some sort of an impact on this team. But the guy that's not being talked about, and I don't know why no one's talking about our running back group. No one's talking about David Montgomery. No one's talking about, Damian Williams. And no one is talking about Khalil Herbert. Khalil Herbert had a phenomenal training camp. He had an absolutely phenomenal preseason games. He looked very electric either when he was catching the ball or running it when he was getting in, in the third and fourth quarter of games. I mean, no one's talking about it. He's not. I know we're going to talk about this guy soon, but we're starting to bring in some special teams guys. So that means that Khalil Herbert is not doing special teams. He is going to be playing for this team as a running back. No one's talking about it. I think that, like we always have said on this show, the door opened with Cohen still being injured and is going to be out for the first 6 games on the IR list. And, that door opened. He took full advantage and no one's talking about it. So huge shout out to Khalil Herbert. Good job, young man, getting out there and grabbing that position.
So I just want to clarify too, is that Tyree Cohen is on the physically unable.
Oh, I'm sorry, he's on the
list.
PUP.
No.
Sorry, PUP.
It's the same thing as IR. Technically, the Bears can activate him technically at any time, but they're already saying that he will be out for another 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And by the way, folks, if you go and relook at the injury, it is much worse than it looked like at first initial reaction. More camera angles, more analysis of it. It's bad. Tyree Cohen also is rumored to potentially have to get the surgery again as it did not heal correctly, according to reports. Wishing him the fastest recovery possible because he is a very impactful player. But Khalil Herbert is definitely going to take on that role of Tyree Cohen while he is out. And Damian Williams, very exciting offense. If we're going to hit on someone on offense that I want to call out, it's Larry Borham. I think Larry Borham is a huge asset to this team. Great fifth-round steal. Had a very strong preseason, had a very strong camp. And he has a guy named Jason Peters mentoring. Not saying Jermaine Ifedi is not mentoring. It's a huge thing. And everyone's like, we wasted money on Jason Peters. We gave him a veteran minimum. Minimum cap hit, absolute possible for Jason Peters to get a 9-time Pro Bowler to teach Larry Borham. And they will be doing a rotation, according to Matt Nagy, of going in and out, or it's going to be with Jermaine Ifedi, whoever it is. The fact that Larry Borham is on the roster, the fact that he is a second-string guy, and he's already improved as much as he has at the beginning, very valuable asset to the Chicago Bears. So please put your thoughts below on who you think is a valuable asset to the offense. But let's get into the defense now, because there is a very shocking number, especially when it comes to our linebackers. So defensive linemen for the Chicago Bears. We have 5 of them. Angelo Blackson, Eddie Goldman, Akeem Hicks, Bilal Nichols, this is where I'm going to struggle. Kairis Tonga. So Tonga made the roster. I think I got it. Okay, someone's definitely going to be like, nope, you got it wrong. I admit that I got it wrong. But his last name I got right, Tonga. Tonga made the roster. Great for him. Now let's go to the inside linebackers. We have 7 of them. 7. Jual Ingombini. I know he's been on the roster for a long time, and I apologize. Zimbabwe, isn't it? It's
Zimbabwe.
Something.
Yeah, it's
Zimbabwe.
I think it's Zimbabwe. Yeah.
Okay, but everyone knows who I'm talking about. Try saying it 3 times fast. I guarantee you no one can do it. Caleb Johnson is on the roster. Christian Jones is on the roster. Alec Ogletree made the roster. Big. That's huge. That was my favorite from this preseason. Roquan Smith, Danny Trevathan, Josh Woods ended up making the roster. Even though he was out a lot of the time with that quad injury, he ended up making the roster. Outside linebackers. Jeremiah Adachu, London, did I get it?
Yeah, you were close, yeah.
I was close. Yeah, sorry. I apologize, guys. Travis Gibson, outside linebacker, struggled in the beginning, ended up making the roster. Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn as your 4 outside linebackers. Quarterbacks, Xavier Crawford, Jalen Johnson, Duke Shelley, Kendall Vilder. The Bears did pick up another guy who has been on this roster. We'll get into that in a minute. Safeties, Deion Bush, DeAndre Houston Carson, Tayshaun Gibson Sr., Eddie Jackson, and then specialists, Pat O'Donnell, Cairo Santos, Patrick Scales. So that is the Chicago Bears defensive side of the ball. London, out of this entire group, I would have to say that my biggest shock that made this roster was Josh Woods, because Josh Woods is a slower linebacker. He knows the defense. I completely understand that. But you also had a guy with the name of Charles Snowden that was fighting for a roster spot that actually, in my opinion, outperformed Josh Woods. Who do you think on this defensive side of the ball has the most to prove, and who are you shocked that made the roster?
Yeah, I think the most to prove, and this is just going to be somebody, and I'm just going to kind of say it because he's kind of been out. He's had COVID stuff. There was kind of whispers of him with the whole retirement stuff, is Eddie Goldman.
Yep.
He needs, especially with how our secondary is looking, which I'll talk about in a second, he needs to come back and be that dominant player in the NFL and as an interior player. Akeem Hicks is getting older. I mean, he's just young. We signed him to a big deal. He needs to just ball out, and I really expect him to. Kudos to Tonga for absolutely dominating the preseason. I mean, he looked like an absolute steal and just a beast out there. Of course, I hear Alec Ogletree now, and I think this is kind of, we talked about it a little bit. I hear he's going to be starting. Because Danny Trevathan's going to be out for like 3 weeks. What an absolute steal for King Pace. He just came there to hang out with Robert Quinn, and he is now a starting linebacker, going to be going up against the first week against his former team. So he knows how they run their offense, how they run their defense. What an absolute steal, and great for Alec Ogletree taking advantage of that opportunity. But for me, honestly, the biggest, I guess, surprise, but also just slash worry is how our cornerbacks are looking. Kindle Vildor, I think, was going to make the roster, but he did struggle. Xavier Crawford, I didn't expect to make the roster. I thought Duke Shelley was kind of on the fringe because he did not have a good training camp or preseason, and both of them made it, over the likes of like Thomas Graham Jr. And I know, and Artie Burns got cut and all these other kinds of players. I'm really worried about that. I think that just is our secondary in general, other than Jalen Johnson and maybe Tayshaun Gibson, because he's a veteran, and Eddie Jackson is very, very weak. I really hope that we do make a lot of moves here, because if we don't, this is a passing league, and I think we're really going to start to get torched. Shout out to Teven Jenkins, Travis Gibson for absolutely dominating those last two preseason games and making this roster. We kind of at first thought he was on the way out, and he came back, proved us wrong, probably listened to the podcast and said, I'm going to do it for the boys on JAY, and I'm going to go out there and ball out. So good. Hey, kudos to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to confirm, the Bears did make moves at the defensive back position. Let's just kind of get into that right now. Let's go into season-ending IR right now for the Chicago Bears already. LaCale London, defensive tackle, will be on the season-ending injured reserve, so he will not play this year. I don't believe he'll be coming back. The injury, I tried finding it. I couldn't find it anymore, so apologies to that. And then Trey Roberson, I said Robinson yesterday. I apologize about that. Defensive back from the Canadian League, from Illinois State. Unfortunately, he is out also with the season-ending injury. So the Bears want to keep him around. They don't want him to hit waiver. I mean, no one would pick him up anyway, but the Bears are keeping him around on technically in the organization, but he is on IR. And I think that's a reason why, Duke Shelley ended up making this roster, is because Trey Roberson had a very nice preseason, very nice training camp. Unfortunate injury to him. Short-term IR, though. Danny Trevathan will be out for the first 3 weeks, according to Brad Briggs. When, like London was saying, Alec Ogletree will be taking his spot, which a lot of people were like, get rid of Danny, like his cap. It wasn't going to save us that much cap. It's good to have his leadership around the locker room. He is not a bad linebacker. And if Alec Ogletree outperforms him, Danny Trevathan knows he's not the Danny Trevathan of 4 years ago. He knows that. We know that. He knows that. Coaches know that. But if Alec Ogletree can be on the field and Alec Ogletree needs a breath, throw Danny Trevathan out there. It's going to work out. That's better than having an undrafted free agent rookie potentially doing that. Danny Trevathan knows this defense. He's the leader of this defense in regards to the linebackers, even though you can make an argument for Roquan Smith. So hopefully a speedy recovery for Danny Trevathan. Happy to see he made the roster. And again, it's his last year on his contract with the Chicago Bears. And Teven Jenkins is on the IR, which means he can come back this season, not season-ending IR. He is just on the IR. So hopefully we'll see him later this season. Again, do not push this situation, because his back is a very serious topic in regards to the Chicago Bears. So let's go into the offense of people that we signed to the practice squad and we added to the roster. So first, let's start with the sign. We signed wide receiver Nasimba Webster off waivers from the 49ers. He's likely going to be the kick return, punt return specialist instead of Khalil Herbert, even though Khalil Herbert easily could do it. He didn't do too bad, but this guy's a speed demon. Did very well for the 49ers. We ended up picking him up off waivers. This is the next signing that a lot of people are very excited about. Rashad Pyramid, who played for the New York Jets last year, had 30 receptions for 500 yards, was claimed off waivers from the Lions. Good, deep threat, big body wide receiver. London, out of these two additions, who are you more happy about? Or are you happy just equally about both?
I'm just happily equally about both. I would say I'm going to lead towards Webster, and it's not because I don't like Perryman, even though, he was on the Jets and the Lions, which are, not the greatest wide receiver cores, in the past 2 years in the NFL. But I'm excited about Webster, and it's because of the fact for Khalil Herbert. They're bringing in another punt returner and kick returner. I think our special teams overall, since, the times of Devin Hester and all, and, Patterson, we lost Patterson, to the Falcons. We've, other than those two players, we've really kind of struggled on special teams. Cohen got injured being on special teams. And so bringing in a guy like him, Webster, who again was off waivers, not a huge, not a huge player, but can contribute on special teams. Great for Khalil Herbert, also great for our special teams. I saw a couple highlights of him, and he looks fast.
Yeah,
he looks
a lot of speed.
Fast. A lot of
and
speed.
He could be a wide receiver. Technically for the Chicago Bears. Just so you know, when we read the offensive, defense, and special teams earlier, that was the 53-man roster as of 2:15 p.m. Central Time on September 1st, 2021. This is subject to change because the Bears did make moves and added people to the active roster, not the practice squad. So more to come on that. We'll have that probably in tomorrow's episode if the information comes around. But People that we re-signed to the practice squad off waivers. Exciting news. I know there's a name missing that, a lot of people are upset that isn't there, but still he can come back. It might happen after this while editing's happening. Running back Artavious Pierce was signed to the practice squad. Very strong signing, knows the offense, had a decent preseason, had a strong camp. Wide receiver Isaiah Coulter. I like that. Fifth round pick from the Texans that we picked up. Like that we brought him back to the practice squad. Not nearly getting the bag nearly as much as other teammates would, but it's good to have a strong practice squad depth, and he's a veteran by technically he's a little bit seasoned. He's played in NFL games. And then running back Ryan Null, practice squad legend for the Chicago Bears, just overall special teams legend for the Chicago Bears. I think that Null is going to end up getting a lot of playing time this year, especially on special teams and how impactful he is. So he was signed to the practice squad. So London, overall initial thoughts of, a guy named Daz Newsome was not on this list as of right now. So what is your initial reaction to these three guys getting signed to the practice squad?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely great for all three of them to be coming back. Ryan Null has been a part of this team for a couple of years now, and I expected him to come back. I don't think he's going to go anywhere else. I think he's okay with, playing practice squad, special teams, all that kind of different stuff like that, and that's the exact kind of player that you want on this team. But Nick, Daz Newsome did clear waiver. He hasn't re-signed with the team. I'm sure that news hopefully will come out, and we'll be able to, break it on our Twitter. So make sure to, follow official JY on Twitter. But, overall, I mean, these are good signings. We expected these guys to come back. I'm really hoping that we do hear news about Daz Newsome and where he's gonna wind up.
Yep, there's no news on him as of right now, but more to come. So, yeah, I totally agree with everything that you're saying. I was just looking it up, so excuse me while looking at my phone, but that would have been fun to say, like, oh, never mind, he's here. So, good. I totally agree. I think that having Ryan Null back is definitely the biggest one for me because he is a special team. He is really good on special teams, and we're missing a lot of – we have DeAndre Houston Carson back, but, Mingo's gone, even though we don't like Mingo. Mingo was strong on special teams for us last year. And, overall, the special teams, you always need that tough guy help on special teams. So defensive and special teams signings and practice squad signings. So the Bears re-signed Artie Burns, brought him back, which is great to hear. Good to have him back, especially at the depth. I could see Artie Burns still making a shot for that starting second corner spot. Or just overall good depth for this team. He's a bigger corner. He has NFL experience. So good to see him back there. And then the Bears re-signed a couple of people to their practice squad. Outside linebacker Sam Kamara. That was he was very strong overall, camp and preseason. Good to see him out there. Charles Snowden is on the practice squad. Whew. That could have been an absolute, why did we get rid of this guy? We should have been on the roster. Good to see him back on the practice squad, and he could get some playing time later this year as well. And then Thomas Graham Jr. is back on the roster at cornerback. Overall, very good. He struggled in games. He was strong in practice, but struggled in games. So I think that he just needs a year to develop, if not half a season. And the Bears could hopefully make some roster moves in order to bring him up. And then we're just going to go into special teams real fast. Kicker Brian Johnson was signed to the practice squad. Now people are like, why are we signing a kicker to the practice squad? With COVID and everything that's going on this year, Brian Johnson had a very strong preseason, very strong camp. It's good to have a backup kicker that you don't have to worry about a guy that's been sitting on his couch for a couple weeks or even months or years that we have to worry about. So overall, good. London, overall thoughts on Artie Burns coming back and being on the active roster for the Chicago Bears. Obviously, they have to make some moves. And then anyone, and especially Thomas Graham Jr., you've talked very highly of him.
Yeah, with Artie Burns, great to have him back. I still don't think that completely solves our cornerback issues currently at the moment. But like you said, good depth, great to have him back. He's been playing on our team now for 2 seasons, even though he was injured last season. So again, good depth, glad to have him back. Listen, in regards to Charles Snowden, okay, when we got Roy Robert Harris, okay, who was the number 1 undrafted free agent, years back, now he's on the Jacksonville Jaguars. No one talked about him. No one said anything. He did the same thing. We waivered him, cleared him, brought him back on the practice squad, I think twice. And then finally he started getting to the starting rotation. Last year he was an absolute monster when Akeem Hicks and everybody went down. And now he's gone on to sign a huge contract with the Jacksonville Jaguars. We wish him the best. That's exactly what's going to happen with Charles Snowden, everybody. Calm down. Okay.
You heard it here first.
That's exactly what's going to happen with Charles Snowden. He is raw. He was an undrafted free agent and a raw player. He needs to put on weight. Okay. He does flash really, really, really great speed and abilities on the outside linebacker position. He also got like literally pancaked like 3 times. Okay. So there's good moments, there's bad moments. He's gonna be on our practice squad. We have a great linebacking core and a great D lineman core, and I think he's really gonna flourish, but he is still probably about 2 years away from starting or even touching the field. So calm down. Also, Thomas Graham Jr., glad to have you back, man. I've been, hyping you up constantly. You struggled a tad bit, but, glad to have you back. Again, he's a player where he just needs more time, okay? He sat out, which killed his draft stock. He just needs more time to get into the NFL mojo, but glad to have them both back.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that, and I don't think that this is it for the Chicago Bears roster moves as a whole. There's a lot of guys that cleared waivers today from various teams. Someone that I kind of want to hit on. So my question to you, London, is before I get into my player, and you could agree with me. I assume you agree with me because we kind of talked about it. Anyone that has hit the free agency market off waivers that you want to pick up as a Chicago Bears?
Yeah, I know the guy you're going to talk about actually just got released, and it's really funny because I literally looked at the tweet and then I went down here and I looked at our script and stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's a great one. It's same kind of thing. I was thinking of Holter Hill. He was a corner, played for the Steelers, actually had a good amount of starting time last season, and played pretty well. And then I think he went to the Bengals like on a contract. Because he played so well, made a little bit of money. Well, they cut him, so he was, at least, a starting corner in the NFL last season. So I thought maybe that guy. Just in overall, let's wait a little bit. There's going to be some more roster moves before week 1. The one thing I'm nervous about is like we're going to go into this Rams game probably not having our secondary solidified, but. Nick, talk to me about the guy that you have as your free agent pickup, because I actually really like this guy. I've got a good buddy who's a huge Jets fan, and he was actually texting me a little bit ago how pissed he was that they released this guy.
Yeah, so the defensive back, Bless Austin. Yes, Bless Austin is his name. 25 years old, had a very strong preseason, has played in the NFL for a few years, has done well. He has a bit of all-star by no means, not a Kyle Fuller, not a Bryce Callahan, but he flashes that potential, and he's been consistent with his play. I mean, his ceiling is, the sky. I would love for Ryan Pace to bring this guy in, not as a practice squad player, bring him in on the active roster. He has NFL experience. Look up Bless Austin, young, 25, hard hitter, good at ball hawk, would be a great addition, even if it's just a depth behind Artie Burns, learn a little bit, and then switch him out. Overall, would be very excited for Bless Austin to come to this roster. So those are London and I's 2 guys that we want to see out of free agency. There's still rumors about Kyle Fuller and Bryce Callahan getting calls to the Denver Broncos, but they have not disclosed the names of the teams that are calling. So could be the Bears. You never know. We'll stay tuned for that. We'll be talking about hopefully some more news on that tomorrow in our Bears podcast on Thursday, which is tomorrow, September 2nd, 2021. So with that, thank you very much for joining this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Dick Brody, joined alongside London Beth, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.